Welcome to today's tutorial. Today what we're going to be looking at is creating this glow neon distortion that we're going to be putting around this portrait of the dancer. Now you can download the start image from the description box below, and then you just need to import this into Photoshop. So this is one variation of it where we have the line going round and round and round. And then the other variation is where we have a shape, in this instance a square, which has been repeated multiple times and goes round like that. So I'm going to show you how to do both of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all my layers so that mine looks exactly the same as yours, which it now does. Then I'm going to come up here to the Move tool. I'm going to click that. And then when I get the Move tool up here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to reset all tools and hit OK. Now that way your Photoshop will look exactly the same as mine. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating a new layer down here, and I'm going to name it Line. Now on that layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush tool, press B for brush tool, and then I'm going to change the size of the brush tool by holding down the Control and the Option button. And when I press my Control and Option button and click with my mouse, I can go left and right to make my mouse bigger and smaller, or up and down to make it harder or softer. So in this instance, I want a hard brush, which is very small, and I'm going to make it, let's say 5 pixels big. Now you can create any shape that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and have a line which goes around the dancer like this, and that should do quite nicely. I'm now going to hide that line. I'm going to come back to the line later. And now what I want to do is I want to show the variation of this where we create a shape. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to call it square. Now on this square layer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my marquee tool. I'm going to right click and I'm just going to choose a regular marquee tool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this blank area and draw quite a small square like that. And you can see I've got my marching ants all the way around my selection of a square. Then I simply right click and then I go down to the stroke option. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the size of the thickness of the line. I'm going to choose my color to be white and I'm going to go for 10 pixels and I'm going to hit OK. Now we still have our marching ants there. We don't need them anymore. So I'm going to go Command and D to deselect my marching ants. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform this square. So Command and T will allow me to transform it. Now at the moment it is wanting to rotate around the central position, and I'm just going to move the central dot to a little bit outside of the square. So now when I transform and rotate around, it's going to rotate around this square here, this circle here. So now as I rotate it, it's rotating a little bit around that circle there. And I'm also going to increase the size a little bit to be around about like that. I'm happy with that transform and I'm going to tick it to hit OK. Now what I want to do is I want to repeat that transform that I've just done multiple times. And in order to do that, you've got to hold down the Shift, the Option, the Command and press T. And what this does, each time I press T, it creates a new layer and it's copying the last transform that we did like that. Now I've obviously got a whole bunch of new squares here, and I've also got a whole bunch of new layers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in my first square layer. I'm going to mouse down to my last square layer. I'm going to hold down my Shift, and then I'm going to Command and E to merge them together to be in one layer, which we can hide on and off. So I'm just going to hide that off. So now we have our background dancer, we have a layer with lines, and we have a layer with squares. I'm going to come down to my dancer to click it to make it my active layer. Then I'm going to Command and J to duplicate that layer. Then I'm going to drag it to the top of the layer stack like that. Once it's at the top of the layer stack, I'm going to need to select this dancer by coming to this tool here, which is the Object Selection tool. I'm just going to click that and I'm just going to draw around my dancer like this. And what Photoshop is doing is it is selecting the dancer very nicely indeed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask like this. And when I create the layer mask, what it's done, if I hide my lower layer, is it's cut everything out apart from the dancer. I'm going to bring my lower layer back in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my square layer and make it active. I'm going to click on that to make it my active layer, and now I'm going to do some changes to the square layer. And what I'm going to do now is if I double click that layer, it will bring up the layer styles. Now there's two layer styles that we're going to work with quite a lot with this glow effect, and one of them is called the inner glow down here. So how this works is you can choose the color that you want. So in this instance I've chosen a purple color. That's fine. You want your blend mode to be set to hard light. And then what you can do is you can play around with the size here. And as you can see, as I increase the size of the inner glow, which is going from the outside of the white towards the inside, is increasing or decreasing in that color that we have. So I'm kind of happy with that. And now I'm going to go to the outer glow, which is down here. And now when I click the outer glow, again, you choose a color that you want. I'm going to choose a color similar to the purple, maybe just a little bit more purple in my outer glow, like that, but similar sort of color, and hit OK. And now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are on our blend mode is on the line dodge adding option. And then exactly as before, when we play with the size of the spread, you can see around the outside here, we are getting an increased amount of glow appearing off of those triangles. Okay, so really what you want to be doing is playing with these sliders, and you can of course change the colors as you see fit and apply to them like that. Now, I kind of like how it's looking at the moment, so I'm going to hit OK to that. And that of course is a completed piece of artwork right there for you. But what I'm going to do, is, as you recall, is there's two options here. One is with the shapes. I'm going to turn that off. And the other one is with the line here. Now, obviously, this line has not had the glow effect applied to it. So to save me from going in and resetting them each time, I'm just going to right-click on this upper layer, and I'm going to go to Copy Layer Style, and it copies all these effects that we've applied to the layer. Then I'm going to click down to my line layer, make it active, and right-click, and now I'm going to paste my layer styles here. And what it does is it pastes the same effects onto this line here. We can of course double click to go into any of these effects. This time it's the inner glow, and let's say I don't want that purple, I don't want that pink color, I want it to be more purple. You can of course change your colors as necessary. And then on the outer glow you can change the size and the spread of this as you wish. Okay, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to hit OK. Now the final thing is, it would be really cool if this line looked like it was going around the model a bit more than all being behind the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here into my model layer along the top. I'm going to make sure that I've clicked into my layer mask here. At the moment the line's around the picture. I'm going to click to go into the layer mask. And once I've done that, I'm going to get my B for brush tool, and this is a very tiny brush tool which I've initiated. So I'm going to hold down the Control and Option button, and then I'm going to mouse over to the right to make my brush a little bit bigger. Now in here, obviously everywhere that I paint black will hide this layer, and we will see the line below. So I'm going to make sure that my foreground color is set to black, and I'm going to paint it to my layer mask. So I'm going to pretend it comes around the front of the girl here, goes behind her there, and here it's going to go in the front, so we're going to need to paint that in, and now it's going behind her here, and now we have the line going out in the front, so I'm just painting into the layer mask behind her here, in front of her here. Okay, so now hopefully it looks a bit more like it's going around the model, behind her, and around the front. So there you go. You now have two different ways, either the line or the shape, to create a texture and an effect which occurs behind the dancer. Here ends today's video tutorial.